Hi there. So this is another RE lesson for this term. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so this is lesson 3. And if you remember, this term we are finding out about the special relationship that Jewish people have with God. So in this lesson, we're going to find out about another person who is special to Jewish people, and that's somebody called Moses. And we're also going to find out about something called the Ten Commandments. Okay, so I'm wondering if just a quick, oh, bless me, sorry, just go a quick recap on do you remember who these people are? And can you remember why this story is important? So you might want to pause the video here and discuss those two questions with your parents. Okay, so hopefully you remembered that these two people are called Abraham and Sarah. And in their story, they were asked by God to move to Canaan. They had made an agreement with God to go, and then God kept his promise and he gave them a child. So why is this story important? Well, Jewish people believe that this agreement is the beginning of their religion, of Judaism. God made the promise to look after Abraham and Sarah then, in that story, and all those hundreds of thousands of years ago. And Jewish people believe that he has always kept his promise to look after them, now and always. Okay, so let's move on. So we're going to find out about another important person in the Jewish faith, and this is a man called Moses. Now, Moses is a person who is also important for Christians and for people who are Muslim. The stories about him can be found in both the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. So these are the Bible is a special book for Christians, the Torah is special writings for Jewish people, and the Quran is special writings for anyone who is a Muslim. And Moses is an important person who appears in each of these books, in these special writings. Okay, so we're going to learn the story of Moses's life and how he was given these 10 commandments. And we're going to find out what the 10 commandments are a little bit later. So this story is going to think about the history of this. This story takes place hundreds of years after the story of Abraham. So Abraham had moved to Canaan. So this story takes place hundreds of years after Abraham. And it's a time in that part of the world where we're thinking about, especially in Egypt, there was a pharaoh. Now, pharaoh is a bit like a king, and he had made the descendants, so that's the people who were then Jewish and who began to believe in one God like Abraham. The pharaoh wasn't a very nice person, and he had made those people slaves. And during this time, these people were called Hebrews and not Jews, or they might have been called Israelites as well, so various names. And it's only sort of later on that people, we know them now as Jewish people. Okay, so when Moses was born, the Hebrews, so this was the Jewish people, were slaves in Egypt. So obviously a slave was somebody who was then captured, taken away from where they lived, and then made to work for nothing really, in very poor conditions, and were treated really badly. Now the Pharaoh at that time was afraid that because he thought they might take over his country. Now the Pharaoh was somebody who was Egyptian, and in those days the Egyptians believed in lots of different gods. They didn't believe in one God like the Hebrews. And you'll find that's very sadly in history, people are very wary, and even today some people are very wary if somebody doesn't believe the same as them. And the Pharaoh was one of those people, so he was frightened of the Hebrews, so he captured many of them and made them slaves. He then also at that time ordered his soldiers, so the Pharaoh ordered his soldiers to hurt all the baby boys when they were born, because he didn't want them to grow up to fight him. He didn't want them when they got older to grow up and not like him and try and fight him. So to save Moses, Moses's mother came up with a plan, and she put Moses in a basket and then sent him off down the river Nile and hoped that God would look after him. Now, Moses floated down the river, and just so happened that the Pharaoh's daughter at that time was down by the river, and she noticed this baby in the basket and she rescued him. She then brought him back to the palace and brought him up as if he was her own son. So she looked after him. Now Moses then grew up in the palace as a royal prince, and one day he got very cross because he saw an Egyptian guard, so one of the Pharaoh's guards, soldiers, being very unkind to a slave. And Moses didn't like this, so he got cross and he then in return hurt the guard. Now Moses was frightened that he was going to get into trouble, so he ran away. And he ran away to a land called Midian. So Moses lived in the land of Midian and worked as a shepherd for many years. And then one day he was out in the desert and he heard a very strange voice coming from a bush. Now, in those days, people especially in the Bible and things like that, believed that God spoke to them like God spoke to Abraham and asked him to do something. God is now speaking to Moses and asking Moses to do something. And God asked Moses if he would go back to Egypt and get all the people who have been made slaves and take them out as slaves and take them back to Canaan, back to the promised land. Now Aaron, who was Moses's brother, said that he would help him. So Moses and Aaron went back to Egypt and asked the Pharaoh if he would let the slaves go. Now the Pharaoh didn't want the slaves to go. He didn't want to lose his slaves. He liked having people working for him and doing all the things doing all the building and all the cooking and all the different things he wanted them to do. So he said no. So God was cross with the Pharaoh, and he started causing lots of problems for the Pharaoh. So he caused what they called in those times plagues. So he caused lots of locusts to come and eat some of the food, and he caused some storms and things. So in the end, the Pharaoh agreed. So the Hebrews fled, but soon after Pharaoh changed his mind. So as soon as all this, Moses had got all the slaves, the Pharaoh decided, actually, no, I've changed my mind. I'm not scared of that God. I want my slaves back. So he sent his armies after him. So the armies chased them to the banks of the Red Sea, and there they were trapped. However, God had promised that if Moses went to get his people, he would help them. So God told Moses to lift up his rod. He had like a big stick, and he held it up. And as soon as he held it up, the waters parted, and the slaves and Moses could go through. And then as soon as they had gone through, the sea came back down again so that these soldiers couldn't follow them. So the Hebrews were free, but still they really had nowhere to live. They were searching for the land called Canaan. So that's the land that they were taken from, and they were looking for that, which they had been promised by God. Their journey was long and they were hungry, but Moses promised that God would provide food. And to their amazement, the next day they woke up to discover that the ground was covered with white food that tasted a bit like honey. And when water ran out, God told Moses to hit a rock, and when he hit the rock, water would appear. So again, God is keeping his promise there. Moses had promised to go and collect the slaves, and if they went with him, God then promised that he would look after them. So after 3 months of traveling, the Israelites there, but the Hebrews arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai, where God called Moses to meet him at the top of the mountain. Moses had to climb to the mountain in a thunderstorm, and when he got to the top of the mountain, God gave Moses 10 very important laws. These laws were called the 10 Commandments and would tell the people how to live. So the people have got to Canaan, and then God said, right, now we're in the promised land, I'm going to give you 10 laws to show you how to live your lives well, so that you keep each other safe. So the Ten Commandments are a set of laws that God sent down to earth to show his people how he wanted them to live their lives. The Ten Commandments are also important laws for Christians as well. So what do they mean? So the Ten Commandments are, it says that you should have no other gods but God. So they're saying that you shouldn't worship lots of different gods, you should only worship one God. They're saying you should not worship statues. Now, in those days, there were lots of other people who did believe in other gods, and they would worship a statue of somebody. And God is saying, don't do that. Please don't worship other statues. Then number 3 is be careful with God's name. Now, what that means is don't say his name and use it like a naughty word. So if you're cross, then you shouldn't be using, you should take his name and be nice. It's a nice name, and you shouldn't be using it if you are cross. Here it's saying keep the Sabbath day special. So that means that on a Sunday, you should be keeping that day special. Although for Jewish people, the Sabbath day is a Friday. And it's saying that you should keep that day special. And that day is when you go to church or you go to the synagogue and you pray to God and you have some special family time. Number 5 says, listen and be good to your mum and dad. Okay. Then it's saying number 6, very important, do not murder, so don't kill anybody. Number 7 says, keep your marriage promises. Number 8 says, do not steal, so you shouldn't take anything that doesn't belong to you. Number 9 says, do not lie, so don't tell any lies, always tell the truth. And number 10 is, do not feel jealous of others and then want what they have. So he's saying that's not a good thing, to feel jealous about other people and then wish what they have. You should be happy with what you have and be happy for what other people have as well, and not want it just because they've got it. So what I want you to do, this is your work that you can do. So I want you to go back here. So I want you to choose one of the commandments and draw a picture to show it. So that's a silver activity. So you could choose maybe that might be a good one. You could choose this one, listen and be good to your mum and dad. So you could draw a picture of you listening to your mum and dad when they're asking you to do something. That might be a good one. Or the gold one is to write out all of them. That's an extra challenge. And then here is a little bit, which 3 commandments do you think are the most important? And then the platinum ones, once you've done that, or once you've done that, is to come up with 10 ways to make our school happy. What 10 ways could we have to make our school happy? So that's your work for today. So it's remembering that story. I'm going to go back here. So it's remembering that story of Moses and how Moses, again, had helped some people. He'd made a promise to God to go and look after the Hebrews and brought them back to Canaan. And then God gave them some special laws to help those people how to live their lives. And these rules are also rules that Christian people also follow, and they will be found in the Bible. Okay, have a good lesson. I'd like to see, it'd be nice to see some of your pictures. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you. Bye.